the long of the story is it's flown out. It's flown to one of the bases in Afghanistan. Then a C-130 pilot flies it from there to Qatar, and then from Qatar to West Germany. So when you look at the Obama policy of why are they staying in Afghanistan, well, this is based on this find of, historical giants like a Bigfoot type of individual. This is the DNA for the new super soldier for the transhumanists that are working on these things.
Yes.
And in this book that's published, there's in the very back of the book, if you buy it, it's got a 5-page article that was written by the officer that flew the thing out. He gives the crate number of the military crate that was used to hold this thing, and then they've got on the website they've got a artist reconstruction of the painting of the giant before it was flown out. But when you look at all these things, the transhumanists are trying to do a lot of things, modifying our peptides so that our bodies operate different, and so that they can introduce all these pathogens that you have to go to more doctors and get more prescriptions on. But
right.
What I wanted to get to on the DNA brain issues.
Well, Jeff, let's hold just one moment if we could there. I would just like to say I can already, with my mind's eye, I'm hearing listeners all over the place. Cognitive dissonance is the term. I can hear a lot of folks out there saying, what Jeff has just said is crazy. This cannot be the case. This is absolutely unbelievable. Well, folks, every time we open the newspapers today, about half of what you're seeing is absolutely unbelievable. Folks 50 and 60 years ago or 100 years ago here in the U.S. would look at our headlines today and think that they walked into a Twilight Zone episode. Of course, if they're from 100 years ago, they wouldn't know what the Twilight Zone is, so that's a bad example. But what I'd like to say, folks, Jeff referenced Steve Quayle, his website. The spelling of the last name is Quayle. So either do a Yahoo or Google search for Steve Quayle, or the website is it's not www, but it is Steve Quayle, first last name together.com. And this is not the only thing, point of research that Steve Quayle has offered and provided for us. There's a wealth of information available on that website. Folks, check it out. I can understand that you might be skeptical or dubious at this point, but trust me, Steve Quayle is not the only researcher that's been focused on these subjects also. And there are any number of data points of evidence to corroborate that material, as Jeff alluded to a couple of those data points. So, Jeff, I very much appreciate you bringing that angle to the program, and I'm curious also to hear your thoughts continuing.
Just read your Bible in Genesis. Goliath was not a mythical character. That was a real character. But getting back to the issues of the brain modulation, we operate under principles that Nikola Tesla had kind of discovered, that we basically, everything in the universe produces longitudinal waves. And what that is that's energy goes into our body because we have a complex dielectric, and then it reflects out. So all of these cell phone towers and all the Gwen towers and all the stuff with HARP, they have ways of modifying our electrical fields. And if anyone's very interested, the best expert in the world has written a book. It's called DNA and Cell Radio. The author's name is Constantine Morel, M-E-Y-L, and you can find his site at www.meyl.eu. And essentially, I'll just read a small section. In water resonance, the DNA is sending a longitudinal wave that propagates in the direction of the magnetic field vector. The computed frequency from the structure of the DNA agrees with those of the biophoton radiation as predicted. The optimization and efficiency by minimizing the conduction losses leads to the double helix structure of DNA. Basically, this is a vortex model, just like what Nikola Tesla was studying, and our DNA is spiral because it follows the natural ether, causing a vortex. So what they're doing in that organic computer is the same thing that occurs in semiconductor dies. We use what are called transverse electromagnetic waves. And what they do is they go up and down like a sine wave. Well, longitudinal waves travel faster than the speed of light, and what they do is when they're traveling faster than the speed of light, they're essentially a neutrino, okay? When they basically slow down to the speed of light because of interferences, they become a photon. And when they travel slower than the speed of light, they become an electron, okay? So this is a study that Constantine Morel has done, backtracking all the work that Tesla discovered the neutrino in the 1890s. He'll never be given credit for it. But what you're just explaining is an organic feedback loop, just like you'd have a temperature controller that does PID control, all right? And all that they're doing, and unfortunately, the senators in the system would not work that way because there's no feedback loop for them. There's no way to close the loop in correction. Okay?
That's very well said, Jeff.
So anyway, what you get to is the scenario is just an organic system that is using longitudinal waves instead of transverse waves.
Yes.
And because they're so much faster and because they're so much denser, they essentially create the holographic matrix in the brain. If you understand that, a long, long time ago, these Buddhist monks would figure out that you could use both hemispheres of the brain, and you can actually create scalar waves just like a radio antenna out of your brain.
Yes.
And this is how people bend materials or could levitate themselves, is they're actually creating an electrical wave. And if you're very interested, there's a website on Dr. Judy Wood's site. It's drjudywood.com.
Yes.
If you go to that website,
folks, please do write that down as well, drjudywood.com, not only for the reason Jeff is mentioning now, but for reasons that I'm going to spend an entire show talking about, which is the truth about 9/11, the truth about what really happened to the structures. Dr. Judy Wood has made an absolutely amazing exposition of the subject. Write that down, drjudywood.com. Please continue, Jeff.
Right. Okay, and our other website is wheredidthetowersgo.com.
Yes.
The thing I wanted to explain is there's a YouTube about Lenz's law on levitation that's very simple. With a 5.5 inch diameter, 100.
Jeff, at this point, Jeff, we need to take a commercial break here. Hold your thoughts. Stick with me on the line if you would. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard Jeff talk about neutrinos and photons and longitudinal waves. Let me translate for you. What he's saying is that it's like a thermos. It makes the hot stuff hot and the cold stuff cold. That's how it works, ladies and gentlemen, these rat neurons, the brains, and the research they're doing on us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crimson Pill Radio program. I am your host, Antonin Fiore, and I am reading to you from the Old Testament of the King James Version of the Bible, Genesis chapter 6. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. I skip forward to verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts in his heart was only evil continually. I pause there. We had made that reference to Steve Quayle, some of his work talking about the biblical giants of the Old Testament that Jeff had alluded to a bit earlier in the show. Jeff, you were continuing with a thought here.
Well, I just you don't have much time. I'd like to give out a couple websites to kind of people to look at. The website from Dr. Woods would be Dr. Judy Wood, drjudywood.com, towers/group7.html. Look at video 14. It shows basically how simple it is. If you have a diamagnetic material that rejects magnetic fields, there's an aluminum plate underneath this to create the. So you don't need much voltage to make anti-gravity. Okay.
Sure.
And so,
Jeff, I apologize, Jeff, my friend. I very much appreciate the information that you bring to the show. And what I need to do is cover one other topic quick. I'll invite you to stay on the line. Let's see if I can get this mention made here, because this is very timely for us right now, and then we'll see if we can come back to that thought you have. Folks, you've heard me cover the comet, as they call it, Elenin. NASA just this past week have announced their plans to try to make further observations. I mention this because over the course of the next 2 weeks, they're going to be committing the resources of our stereo instruments, observational instruments. Stereo is an acronym. It stands for the Solar Terrestrial Relations Observatory. And as much as NASA has been trying to convince us of late that LNN is not only there's nothing extraordinary about it, but in fact it's rather a weak or unordinary type comet, not interesting at all. And yet they're going to be committing 2 hours of every day during the next 2 weeks. One of the two instruments, the observational instruments of stereo, will be turned. It will perform a 135-degree roll in order to observe Comet Elenin. once again for 2 hours out of each day over the course of the next 2 weeks, which is rather and quite interesting. And I would invite you to go to stereo-ssc.nascom.nasa.gov if you'd like to find out more information about that as well. Jeff, you're mentioning Dr. Judy Wood and her website and resources. I actually plan to do a full show on this, Jeff. Maybe even next week will be the timing will be right. So I'd like you to rejoin us then. One last announcement that I need to make quickly before the wrap of the show today. Folks, RBN, I honestly believe this with every grain of my being, provides the best and most well-rounded set of truth and reporting that you're going to find anywhere right now. I listen to shows, whether it's John's show in the afternoon every day, whether it's Jeff's show, and he's had his guest Roger Sales on, working through material that has repeatedly blown my mind. Folks, what makes all of it possible is not only supporting our sponsors, but also your direct contributions to RBN. Right on the front page, there's a piece there where you can make a contribution, a donation. That is what makes the satellite transponders turn on and the signal goes out to all of you. So please, folks, please consider making a direct contribution to RBN sometime soon, whether it's $5 or $500. Every penny of it is very much appreciated and goes to good use. Jeff, let's come back to your thoughts quickly here before the end of the show.
Last item, if you want to know how weather engineering occurs in like Dr. Judy Wood's book, go to jmccanney science.com and get his Principal Metropolia, the Physics of Earth, Sun, Weather, and the Atlantis to Tesla Corbin connection, and that'll explain how weather engineering is done currently in these modern days.
Jeff, thank you so very much. I always appreciate hearing from you, friend. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call that quits.